waiting. I'm going to kick you if I get out right now, Ron.
You didn't know if you're gonna see that sign.
Came out in 61. You can tell. That's where they came out. How old are you? 74.
The engine's not in there.
Okay. So you make it down here and talk about these shoots. Now, it was 1914 and the air drills came out. So the production in this mountain went through the roof, went sky high. So they had to get the ore out a faster way than using that incline shaft down there. So what they did is they cut this tunnel in here it was completed in 1915. They came back in here and put in these transfer chutes. Now there's a number of transfer chutes around on this level. But behind these chutes is an ore pocket. It's 20 foot wide, 15 foot deep. It's a tunnel that goes straight up to the levels above us. Now there's 4 levels above us, each level's 100 feet between levels. They would drop all their ore that they mined in the upper part of this mountain in these transfer chutes, transferred it down to this level here, and they loaded in these 1-ton ore cars. Now in 1915, the only way they had to get the ore cars out, they hired a bunch of young stout men from 15 to 20 years old to push these cars out by hand. They called them trammers. They pushed these cars all the way outside, dumped them, pushed them back in, loaded another car, and kept pushing. They did this for 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. But they couldn't keep up with the production in this mountain. So they brought down the mules. They already had mules back up in the mountain working because they mined this mountain for 34 years before they even cut this tunnel in here. Now, they brought so many mules down to this level, and a mule could pull 4 of these cars at a time. Now, the way a mule knew there was 4 cars hooked up to him, he would listen for the slack in the chain for each car that was hooked up. If they tried to hook up a 5th car to the mule, he would stop dead in his tracks. Some of them would even sit down on their butt in the middle of the rail and refuse to go anywhere until they disconnected that 5th car. So that was the first organized union underground. Now, the mules had their own stable down here. They had their own stall. They lived down here. They never went back outside until it was time for them to leave. Now they'd work down here for about 5 to 6 years. Their eyesight would get real weak because all they saw was candlelight or carbide lamp light. So their eyesight would get real weak working in the dark like that. So that he would walk that mule outside, all the way outside, would put a blindfold over him. And then he'd shoot him, and then have a big barbecue that weekend.
You're messing. I was like,
I just want to see what the look on his face is going to be. Then walk that mule outside and put him in a darked out barn, completely blacked out. Then they let a little bit of sunlight into him every day, and his eyesight would return. But that mule didn't have to go back underground. He was given away to a rancher or farmer in the area. Well, anyway, the mules couldn't keep up with the production, so they brought down the Manchi motor. That's that little motor I pulled the sin on. Now, they used those motors down here for a number of years. They come out in 1920. And then around 1928 to 27, 28, they brought down trolley motors. Now there's a big trolley motor set by the fence outside next to the building out there. It's got a big arm in the middle of it. And that arm rode on a copper wire they strung up down the middle of the tunnels. Now, they used those trolley motors right up until 1975 when they shut the mines down here. They had about 3 or 4 of them on my level that would run up and down the drifts all the time, hauling ore out. Now, this is 240 volts. If you touch it once, you won't touch it again, guaranteed. Thank God it was AC current because it knocks you away from it. But one day I was carrying a drill steel over my shoulder. Another miner yelled at me and I turned around to answer him. My drill steel hit that. Well, it knocked me flat on my face. Well, where I worked, there was constant water dripping in all day long. So the floor was about that much mud everywhere. So I got a mouthful of mud that day because it knocked me flat on my face. It's kind of like getting hit with a police taser. But that's another story. I ain't going there. Okay. That's how they got the ore out.
So where did the ore go to?
It went to the shaft.
No, I know
Processing
after that.
plant.
Where to go to see what's in
It went to
what's
the
in it?
mill they had set up here on the other side of the open pit. There was a big mill on the side of the mountain. They crushed that ore up real fine
And separated?
and separate it with a chemical bath. They'd add oxygen to it and it'd bubble up and they'd skim the bubbles off the top. Then they'd dry that out and send it to a smelter that was in Douglas, Arizona, about 25 miles away. Then from there it went to El Paso to the refinery. Okay, 1961, all the shift bosses got together and went to the company and said, we need transportation underground because we're walking way too far. They did have to walk about 5 miles before lunch and 5 miles after lunch. They had to see every one of their miners twice a day on that particular level. So they were walking quite a bit, but they thought they were gonna get those little matchy motors like the one I pulled Jen on. They thought they were gonna get those to ride around on. That's not what they got. They got this here. Yeah. They built this bike up at the shop and sent them down for the shift bosses. They weren't too happy about the situation, but
So,
they did tell all the miners, don't touch the shift boss's bike. Well, you don't tell a bunch of miners not to touch anything, you know. So the first chance the miners got, they'd go hide the bike from the shift boss. Or they would smear grease all over the seat. They would put wedges on the track to run him off. They tormented the poor shift boss to death. So after about 5 years with this bike underground, they pulled them all out. Too much horseplay. Causing too much trouble. The shift bosses were very angry, which the miners loved. Anyway, the shift boss is spending all day long looking for his bike instead of doing his job. So let's go back here and check out some drills, then we'll go back to the blast.
More copper.
Okay, these two drills here are the first two that came in. They're real close to it. This one came out in 1914. All the miners called it the Widowmaker because when they drilled with it, that filled the whole room up with dust. There was no water hookup, no way to wet down that dust. So about a year later, they came out with this one. This thing weighs 285 pounds. Well, they both had to be put on stands that were so heavy, but it did have a water hookup. The water went down the center of this shaft, came out the end of the bit. Now, every time they drilled a 7-foot hole, they had a chain hoist up at the top, and they'd have to unbolt it, pull it up, for the next hole, bolt it back down, start drilling again. They were pretty slow drills, but anyway, the miners were glad to get them because anything beats swinging a double jack all day long to drill 4 holes. Now, you would have to drill about 28 to 30 holes with this machine, and it'd take about 6.5 hours using this. But then in 1955, they came out with this machine here. This is the exact same type of machine I used when I worked underground. It's called the Gardner-Denver choke leg. Now it's got an air cylinder here in the leg. It's got a water hookup also. When you add air to that leg, right here, that leg will extend down against the ground and pushes that machine in as you're drilling. So you could drill the same round that one took 6 hours with, you could drill the round out in 2 hours. So it was really good for the bonus miner. See, we used to get paid $45 a day, but we also were on a bonus system. They would set a standard of ore for us to take out in a 2-week period, which was 12 days of working. So, one blast on day shift is 40 ton of rock. Say they set a standard of 500 ton. So one blast on day shift is 40 ton. If you blast it on night shift, that's another 40 ton. You can get out 80 ton of rock every day out of that stope or out of that working area. And you could go past that past that standard pretty quick. So a lot of times, we got $25 a ton. Each miner got $25 a ton for how we went over. So you could make quite a bit of bonus money besides our check. A lot of times our bonus check was as much as our wages. So we can make good money. Now when this machine came out, those bonus miners were in hog heaven because this was called the Cadillac. This is a machine that made them money.
What about this one here, like, if you had to move from point A to point B, do you still carry it?
Yeah, you'd have to break it down.
Oh, you can break them down and do it, okay.
Yeah, break it all down. You'd have to move the whole thing over, like if you want another row of holes here.
Okay.
And then unbolt it all, take it loose. Now, two miners would carry this part, then the machine part to get it out of there for the blast, but they'd have to drag it out. Very heavy. Okay, let's go back here to the blast area. Now this here is a standard round for a square set of timber. I don't know who drilled this, but there should be another row of holes over there and another row of holes up on top. There should be about 28 to 30 holes for a square, to blast out a big enough area for a square set of timber. First, you start with the center hole. All the holes are 7 foot deep. You start with that center hole, then you drill these 4 holes around it. Now, this is what's known as a 5-hole burn. Now, this is probably the most important part of the whole blast. These holes here are left empty. There's nothing put in them. They're called relievers. When this hole goes off, it blows out a chunk of rock out of the center of this rock face, straight out just like a shotgun, and leaves an open space in the middle. And then a second later, the next hole goes off, it breaks to that open space. Then the next one, it goes around like that. And everything breaks to the path of least resistance. So they all break to that open space that the burn left in the middle. Now, then it keeps going a second apart, each hole, all the way around, till you get all through your holes. And then the last 4 or 5 holes that go off are called the lifters. And they pick everything up off the floor pile it in a big pile right out here on that other square set that was sitting here. The way you get to that point, we loaded our holes with one stick of dynamite all the way to the back of the hole. Then we used a material called carbonite. Now, before carbonite came out, they used all stick dynamite, 7 to 9 sticks in each hole. But that caused a lot of problems too, because it left nitro dust in the air. And even that the dust settled, there'd still be nitro in the air when the next shift come on. So that gave them a splitting powder headache, they called it. It's like a migraine headache. It's bad. Anyway, they went to carbonite. Carbonite was a lot cleaner, explosive. It's about the same stuff. That's diesel fuel and fertilizer, but it's made in a factory setting. It was a little beaded material, and it was fluorescent orange in color. And it came in a big sack. We put one stick with the primer and the fuse to the back of the hole, fill the rest of the hole up with carbonite using an air gun. Just blow it in there until it came out, and then we'd pack it with packing material on the outside. Pack it real tight. Okay, you had all your holes loaded, so you should have them, all the fuses were 12 foot long, so you should have about 5 foot of fuse hanging out of each hole. You take this center one here, the first one that you wanted to go off for the burn, and you cut off 15 inches off the end of it. Then you load that fuse into a spitter board. Now, they give me a little short spitter board. Most of the time, they're about that long. But anyway, this will do the job for what I got to tell you. Then they go to the next hole. You take that 15 inches you cut off of here, and you measure 15 inches on here. Find that same length, and then you add a 1/2 inch to it. That's that 1 second in between shots. You load it into your spinner board. The next one you do the same thing, but you'd add 1 inch to this one. So this fuse is a 1/2 inch longer than the one before it. And then you just keep going that way, 1.5 inches to this one, 2 inches to the next one, until you got all your fuses loaded on your spinner board. Then you take a spitter rod. It's covered with magnesium, and it burns about 1200 degrees. It gets red hot. You light this, and you go down and you light all your fuses just like that, all the way down. Should be about 30, 28 to 30. Let's say 30. You break your spinner board off, run like hell.
Down the hole.
No, you wouldn't have to run. It takes a fuse 40 seconds to burn a foot. So you had 8, 9 minutes to go down that manway that was on the side of the race, go down that to the level below. Then you count each shot that goes off. You can still hear it. Well, let me give you an idea what it sounded like when you were down below. I'm not going to blow up anything.
Oh my god.
You're kind of nervous, aren't you?
No, I'm not nervous. I just don't like loud noises. No, it's fine.
No, I'm just giving you a hard time.
Oh, I'm well aware.
Anyway, you count each shot that went off. There should be 30 of them that goes off. But say there's only 29. That meant you had a missed hole. So if that was the case, when you went out to catch the cage, like that cage right there, when you went out to the station to catch the cage to go up, you'd write on a chalkboard your stope number and how many missed holes you had. That way it would be reported to the next shift coming on, and they would have to find the missed hole. And they couldn't do anything in that stope until they found it. Because missed holes would get you killed. So, any questions?
Did you ever have it where somebody did get killed?
It's just not when I worked. Not when I worked underground. The 8.5 years I worked underground. There was some fatalities by missed holes in the earlier days because they didn't respect them as much as we did, when we worked underground. But they would think, well, it's a missed hole. It's not going off. They'd start hammering to drill their holes, and the damn thing would go off, all of a sudden. But no, if you were caught not looking for that missed hole or not finding that missed hole and going ahead and going to work without making sure you found it, you could be fired on the spot. They were really strict about missed holes. And you'd get a missed hole about maybe every third or fourth blast that you did, which wasn't too bad. How did they clear a missed hole? Well, what they did, I'm glad you asked that, because that fluorescent orange bead, right? That would come in handy, because if it didn't go off, that fluorescent orange would be in the muck pile or on the face. It'd still show up. So they'd find that fluorescent orange, and then they'd look for a fuse that wasn't melted. They'd find a fuse in good shape, follow that fuse till they found that primer. Once they found that, they'd take a water hose and wash that dynamite, and stick a dynamite till it just fell apart. It just turned to mush. But they take that fuse that was left, it might be this long, it might be this long, but they take it to the powder magazine and dispose of it. So, any other questions? Now this here is the Southwest shaft. This is the exact type of cage I rode when I went to work underground. They would come off of those man cars back there. Come on back here, folks. They come off the man cars back there. They come back in here. And there was a guy that loaded the cage. He was called a cager. And he would load the miners or equipment, whatever needed to be moved, onto that cage. Now 12 miners would fit on that at a time. They'd stack them in there like sardines. Now the way he communicated with the guy in the horse